All right.
Live. We're recording.
All right. So, Dr. J and Make It Happen. So, I'm loving it. So,
Here we are.
yep. So, we've been trying to do something for a minute. This is our first go at it. And, one of the things I said today, I kind of just wanted to talk about, which I learned today. We've known each other for 10 years, right?
Had to make that correction.
Yeah. I appreciate it. So within those 10 years, I've been in my lane with medical devices, surgical implants, biologics, allograft, and you've been doing your thing in the pharmaceutical world. So and also business strategizing as well. So that's kind of how I kind of want to kick off Dr. J and make it happen.
That's right. Let's do it.
So within those 10 years that we've known each other, there's been a lot of changes in healthcare in general. With your field, what have you seen has really changed, revamped, within those 10 years?
So undoubtedly, as we've seen recently with um, the deal with Mark Cuban's pharmacy, right? I think that as we've seen things like Good RX, and we're starting to see with like Mark Cuban's pharmacy, I started having these discussions about 3 or 4 years ago, Keith, where I always thought that what I would call a top-down model from the pharmaceutical space is part of what makes it broken, and that we don't necessarily have a whole lot of um, parameters of control in place, even still today, with the pricing of pharmaceuticals. And what I mean by that is, when a drug comes out with a pharmaceutical, you know, there are some negotiations, some things that go back and forth, but still largely today, it's a top-down method. And what I mean by that is that reimbursements and payments are based off of what's called AWP. And
What's AWP?
acquisition wholesale price or average wholesale price. But it's in that world, right? And essentially, what ends up happening is, so if I have a drug that costs me, whether it costs me 50 cents or $50, I can load it out there into what we call these data banks for $1,000. Okay, and there's no checks and balances behind that. All right,
Mhm.
you just put it out there. And essentially, these insurance companies are the pharmacy benefit managers, the PBMs. They basically pull from these data banks, all right, for the reimbursement rates and stuff like that. And then what ends up happening from that point on, KP, is there's a formula that nobody knows. For instance, I mean, except for the guys on the inside that say if your product's at a tier 1 coverage, tier 2, tier 3, as you can imagine. I don't know how many covered tiers there are, but it falls into basically like a basket, and that basket is what dictates your copay. Okay, so essentially, the way that the reimbursement works is whatever I set that price at, then there's going to be some level of discount that the PBM automatically takes right off the top. Usually it's in the 15 to 20% range. Okay.
Mhm.
Then from that point on, you have a copay, which is the patient's out of pocket portion based on the basket that particular drug falls in. Okay. But here's the cool part: who decides what basket that product falls in, right?
Mhm.
The PBMs do. I mean, that's it basically, right? And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, they basically are able to say, hey, you know what, this is nothing new and revolutionary. We're going to toss it into the lowest basket, which means you're going to have, if minimal coverage, you're going to have a huge out of pocket. Usually, the way that they do it these days for those types of products, KP, is your out of pocket is going to be tied into your deductible. So let's assume you have a product that's non-revolutionary, what we would call a Me Too product, so to speak, and it doesn't treat a huge need, or I shouldn't say a huge need. It doesn't treat a serious need. Okay, then it'll go into like that basket. And if you have like a $5,000 deductible, and your copay is going to be tied to that deductible. So if a doctor writes a prescription for that particular drug, and it's a $700 drug, and you haven't met your deductible, then your out of pocket is going to be $700.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of how they're tying to that. But that kind of gives you a peek into the window of what I call the top-down model. Okay. And still in all, that presents a broken model because you're still dealing with the $1,000 number. Does that make sense? We haven't gotten around that part of the problem yet. So what I've been promoting, and I was in a meeting about 3 or 4 years ago with the TPA in a third-party administrating company, by the way. And what they do is they'll partner with um, big organizations, big self-funded companies, and they'll manage a lot of their benefits. That's kind of what they do. And so they had presented some data to us about an organization, and I flew out to Parkersburg, West Virginia to kind of present this idea to them. All right, by saying, hey, let me feed you the cost of the drug, and then the only thing I'm going to provide is a filling fee of, let's say, $5 per prescription or something to that effect for each individual member. Therefore, we're not playing from the top down. We're giving them a bottom up approach. Okay. So we're coming from the cost perspective, because another thing that goes on in these same big organizations is that the PBMs help manage these self-funded type projects. Okay. And so what ends up happening is that the PBM is like, oh, well, we negotiate deep discounts and we'll share that discount with you. Seriously? I mean, they're negotiating against themselves. Think about that for a minute, right? They're kind of like, hey, you know what? We're getting a 15% discount. We're going to negotiate the 30%. We'll split that with you. So now the PBM gets a 22.5% discount. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus you get it so they still win in the long run, right? You're not solving the problem.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to what I was talking about with change. So one of the things that GoodRx has done is something that you and I have talked about before. It's providing information to the public about the true cost of a lot of products. Is it the end-all be-all solution? No, but you're talking about an extremely complex web of problems here when you're talking about the drug development space, right? Because there still are revolutionary drugs being developed all the time. And patients do need access. We do need insurance coverage on those things. And you can't discount that. So having sweeping wholesale change in the drug business is just not a one-stop shop, right? But I do believe for what I would call those mid-tier drugs on down, things that are non-revolutionary, Me Too drugs, stuff that's very similar to what's on the market, even though it's new. Okay. In other words, we just designed a better mousetrap is what we like to call it, right? Having that bottom-up approach, like what Cuban and them are doing by saying, hey, cost plus, right? That's his whole business model, right? And having that information available to people is powerful. And I know that's something that you and I have talked about as well in the med device space, right? Is trying to provide information for people, allowing them to make better decisions regarding their healthcare life.
And, one of the things I really don't know too much about GoodRx, I've heard of it. You talked about it a couple of times. And to my lay experience, is basically a discount program to where they're offering, a prescription to a patient at a discounted price. And so for as a layperson, am I getting that correct? And if I am not getting it correct, is that the change that you've seen that has helped, that has kind of been a positive impact on the consumer over the last 10 years?
What they've really done an amazing job of is, they're providing a resource of information for the consumer, right? Hey, my doctor just wrote me a prescription for XYZ drug. I'm going to go to GoodRx and I'm going to shop it, right? Because now some of the benefit behind what they do is some of the secret sauce, right? And which is why they're a $10, $15 billion market cap company while they're still relatively young to the larger population, right? Because they do something that, guess what? People have tried to replicate. You and I both know a company that's competing against them at the current moment, but I do know that they're struggling. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's because GoodRx does something. And look, I've played from the pharmacy side, from the drug development side, from all these different angles. So I've kind of come from a lot of the different spaces. I cannot specifically tell you how they make money doing what they do, other than the fact that they collect a ton of data and they're utilizing that as a source of revenue, similar to 23andMe or Ancestry.com, right?
Okay.
Those guys generate hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and it's not from people buying a $29.99 kit, all right? They're collecting data every time somebody does a swab and sends it back in, and then drug companies and all these other companies lease that data from them at extreme costs, okay? Because it reduces the time for them to do drug development, is what it is.
Yeah, of course.
Right? But going back to GoodRx, the biggest benefit for them is that they're tied into one of these databases that I told you about. And you could rent, I say rent space, that's not the right word. You can actually pay a fee as a company, because I used to play in the manufacturing space. I had a company that did that, Topic Care Therapeutics. And we were offered that service when we signed up through what was called MediSpan, all right? And we can pay a fee, like a lot of large wholesalers actually pay that fee to be tied into MediSpan. And my gut feeling is that GoodRx and some of these players are tied into them. So therefore, there's an immediate pricing reference when somebody pings a drug.
Yeah.
Okay. And therefore, GoodRx doesn't have to be in the business of making sure that drug manufacturing pricing is up to date. MediSpan already takes care of that. And First Databank's another one. Orange Book's another one. Those are usually your bigger, Red Book, not Orange Book. Red Book. Those are the bigger databases that keep track of drug pricing and whatnot. And so therefore, they don't have to play in that world. Okay. They can still do what they do, which is if you and I get a prescription for whatever, we type that into our computers and it spits out and says HEB's got it for this much, Kroger got it for this, Walgreens, CVS, and it basically pings the nearest pharmacies in the area and gives you what a cash price that if you bring in their coupon, right, which is essentially their GoodRx card, by the way, operates the same way that a copay coupon card would operate. Okay, it's the same concept. You get a genericized bin and PCN number that goes through their approval switch, so to speak. All right, and you get it at that price. Okay, like I told you, copay coupon cards kind of work similarly, right? Except it's issued from the drug manufacturer. All right, the drug manufacturer has a set bin and PCN number, so when you bring it to the pharmacy, they run it as like a co-insurance program. Okay. That is how that works. Okay. And then what ends up happening is that the manufacturer is billed the difference in the money. So if you have a maximum out of pocket of $10, but the copay was supposed to be $35, the manufacturer is on the hook for the additional $25.
Yeah. Well, so this is something that we're going to have to talk, more about, because again, you're very well versed, in the pharmaceutical space, and I'm still trying to play catch up. I'm still trying to learn, the different acronyms.
Well, the difference is that, look, dude, we're seeing a lot of change, and the fact of the matter is the time in question, because and I hate to keep going back to it, but I mean it's right there in your backyard. Literally with Cuban launching this whole cost plus model, it's going to entice change. It has to. There's no other way around it. Okay? Because if nothing more, it's showing people that, and I hate to make it sound like this, but another hot topic in the world right now is this Live Golf Tour, right? I don't know if you've read about it. Okay.
No.
The biggest issue is that it's a whole nother tour and it's backed by the Saudis. All right. So literally people are having issues right now because it's backed by the Saudis, and there's a whole lot of social upheaval, when you talk about that regime. But at the same time, I think that they're missing some of the other stuff going on, in that guys like Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson and all them are getting paid bananas money to go play over there. Because guess what? The Saudis don't care. They're just in it for whatever they're in it for. And I believe that's the same thing with Cuban. I firmly believe Mark Cuban is not in this to make money. He happens to be a dude who can be in that game to not make money. Does that make sense?
Got it. Okay.
Now, he's in it to win it. He's in it to win it, okay? But I go back and I've made this statement to you, and I've even talked about this company in my strategy classes. I always refer back to companies like Dollar Shave Club. And the reason why I bring up Dollar Shave Club is because most everybody knows about Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club's game was not necessarily to make money. Okay. Their game was to kind of disrupt the industry, build a brand, and they built a loyal following of 3 million clients a month, and they sold for $1 billion to Unilever, and they were not even profitable. Okay. So my point is that their strategy was not necessarily set forth to see how much money we can make. Does that make sense?
No, I get that. Yeah.
I believe Cuban's strategy is that same concept. Like, I don't think he's into this game to see how much money he can make. And that's important. Okay. Me and you get into a pharmacy space and we're trying to do things. We're in it to make money. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
so I'm not looking at this. How can I develop this amazing platform? How much money can we make to make sure everything stays alive to where the customers are still getting what they want? You can really kind of take a whole nother look at this thing. And that's what makes Mark Cuban unique. And I believe it's something to watch and see how that disrupts the industry. And the key is how many imitators come up behind him.
Well, of course, that's going to happen. You're going to have people mimicking, what he's doing. But, if it's an innovative process, and that's one of the things like, you're talking about, he may not be in it to make money, but he's in it right now to get these conversations going.
Exactly.
And I can really see that's how, the direction of what you're talking about as far as, the pharmaceutical world. And one of the things, that, going back to, us starting this, is we've known each other for 10 years. And one of the things I can appreciate is, when I look at pharmacy being preventative care, meaning that is non-surgical intervention, meaning that, okay, well, you have a symptom, you have some kind of pain. Well, it's not severe enough to where you need surgery. And then that's where a doctor is going to prescribe, some kind of medication, for a patient. And so that's the world that you're in. Is you're on more the preventative care side. And
put that into proper context really fast. From the surgical procedure side, it can be viewed as preventative care. Let's look at it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Put it into that context, and it's 100% accurate. Right.
Yeah.
In other words, it's part of the protocol, right? We're going to put you on these meds so that we don't have to put you into the surgery because surgery's so major. Anytime. It could be whatever. How many people we heard of that go in for some stupid procedure that they walk out in the casket, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. And like I said, it's like, so that's the space that's the lane that you're heavily involved in and you do it really well. And, for me, as I mentioned earlier, joked earlier about, the Odd Couple, is that, I'm on the surgical side. I've been in surgery for, about 2 decades. And I say that from doing the clinical side as a surgical tech in the military to then being a consultant with a big medical device pharmaceutical company to now, owning a medical device, distribution company to where I'm working alongside, surgeons in different aspects. So I know the surgical side. I tell people like this, put me in the operating room any day and I know what I'm doing. Like I said, my critical thinking skills really kind of hone in because I've been in those different phases of surgical on the clinical side, consulting, and now where I'm at right now as a business owner. And, there's a lot of value in that because we can really, I look at it myself as having feet on the ground and knowing the problems and the issues that surgeons are having, that the hospitals are having, and that the patients are having. And we can kind of, adapt and try to find ways to offer solutions. And so again, that's kind of where I like and appreciate our connection for over 10 years because we respect each other.
Sure.
I like to say I respect you when it comes to like, hey, what is this medication? What is that? I'm gonna go to you. And then, vice versa. There's something related to, surgical related, we connect on those vibes. And so again, that's one of the things I really appreciate about our 10-year, connection. And, I look forward to another 10 years and we're doing something with this. So
journey.
Yes, sir. So it's a journey. We're in our own lanes. And, like I said, it's Dr. J and make it happen. So I'm loving it.
I think you're going to see, and I've been saying this for the past several years, I think you're going to see a large and growing disparity in drug coverage. And so, when I was looking in the past at certain deals and stuff, I started thinking about that, right? As you're starting to see how insurance changes, and that comes from being a business owner, right? I can see what insurance coverage I'm paying for my employees and what do we want to commit to. And then I can see that my costs are going up while the coverage is going down. And I mean, come on, you can just extrapolate that kind of information, right? Like, hey, things are changing. And so we started seeing that from the pharmacy aspect too, as far as what was coverage, increased copays. Like I told you, about 4 or 5 years ago, they started attaching copays to deductibles. Well, that was huge, because you're like, hey, like I said, you got an expensive drug. Next thing you know, most people are used to seeing 20, 30, 40, even 50 and $60 copays today, believe it or not. And depending on the drug, they're willing to pay for it. But you see like a $600 copay.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn,
And, no, for sure. And, another aspect that I see is really the takeoff of not only utilizing social media to play a big part, what we're doing in healthcare, but also the millennials, meaning that not many companies are really trying to understand what millennials want, what millennials are looking for as far as, their healthcare. And I say that because there are a number of hospitals and, different people in management positions with different healthcare wellness businesses, and they have board members, and those board members are established. And meaning that they have experience, they looked at the numbers, but, there should be a board member that may be a millennial that may have some input as far as the outlook, like, look, what are millennials looking for? That way we can adapt, because we're always going to play catch up. And if we're not listening to millennials, like I said, they see the board members, they see the people with the gray hairs. Don't worry, I got them too.
My wife was pointing that out the other day. We were sitting there having coffee. She's like, baby, you're not salt and pepper no more. You like all gray.
Yeah. No, I'm more pepper with a hint of salt. So, so
I didn't move over. I'm like sugar, baby. I'm a little sweet.
But again, I say that because within the next 10 years, I think that's going to be more of a focus, which is going to be utilizing social media and really addressing millennials, because like, again, these millennials, these Gen Zs, whatever, they are the future of healthcare.
Sure.
And I say that because, again, I'm gonna have to look at, my daughter one day taking care of me, and what's going to want her to want to take care of me, so, and it's like, do I need an app for her to take care of me? And these are the things that we're looking at. And a lot of these times, these hospitals have an app that is specific to their facility, but it's not taking the patient as a whole, because what these hospitals and these apps are doing is, as a patient, you do have a choice. And if I want to go to Dr. A, hospital B, and they may not be connected, they may not have any kind of collaborative methods of communicating. Well, it's like, well, do I need to have an app for this and an app for that? There's not a universal app to where, it's going to take care of a patient. And for millennials, they should really, healthcare should really start looking into that, because they're going to want that. They're going to want an app for everything. I mean, I have an app for my lights. We have an app for my pool. And, I know there are apps for, for the hospitals, but again, with the ecosystem of healthcare, they're not always connected.
Right.
You know, you're going to have your insurance provider, you're going to have your doctor, you're going to have your hospital, and each one going to have their own platform. I'm sure, you know, an insurance provider, they have their app. Hospital have an app. Only one I haven't seen to have an app yet is probably the doctors and the surgeons, because there is an expense to that. But I think doctors should come together and do something. But again, within the next 10 years, I do see, and there should be a little more focus on millennials and really trying to address what their concerns may be moving forward. Because again, the board members with the gray hairs, you know, they're good, they're staying in their ways, but we need to really adapt and listen more to what the younger generation has to say.
Yeah, that's a growing problem that we can say for the next call. But trust me, and that is, you know, the growing use of what I call healthcare silos, right? In other words, if it's becoming more and more apparent, but it's going to continue to get worse. And that is, if you have a certain kind of insurance, you're going to be able to go to a certain hospital brand, which is going to hire certain doctors that are going to use certain pharmacies and blah, 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 right? In other words, we're going to create these silos. So if you're Blue Cross Blue Shield, then you're only going to be able to go have surgery or whatever at this particular hospital, because that's the only hospital that's going to take that particular brand of insurance.
Of course.
And then there's only so many doctors that are going to be hired to be able to do surgeries at those particular hospitals, because they fall into whatever, that contract or that category, right? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, same concept. So those hospitals that you've seen before, I know it's all over here in the Woodlands, right? Where CHI owns, you know, hospital here. They own St. Luke's. Well, they also go up and buy a lot of the primary care practices around here so that they can funnel patients to those hospitals and surgery centers.
Yep.
It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And that's kind of what you're going to see moving forward, right? And so it is what it is, man. It's, you know, healthcare is it's an enigma.
No, it is. But again, for the next 10 years, you know, like I said, you've seen changes in the pharmaceutical space. I've seen it in the medical device, you know, hospital aspect. And I think now it's going to be more of a social media initiative, community initiative, and also millennial initiative as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome, my brother.
Well, perfect. So Dr. J, you know, this is one for the books. I appreciate it. So yeah, what else you gotta, you know, add to it?
That's it. Live and direct.
All right. Here it is, Dr. J, and Make It Happen. So thank you guys, and you'll be doing some more.